following takes place between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Events occur in real time.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another week of FPC Radio Live. That's right. I'm Ian Glendon. I'm your host, joined, as always, by Mr. John Sabachetti on the phone on the, well, we don't actually have a name for the hotline. It'd be cool if we did, because then it'd be a great little transition we could do. Maybe we can call it the Aaron Rodgers hotline. I don't know if we can use his name without getting in any trouble. We'll think of something. We'll come up with something creative. John, do you have any ideas what we could call our hotline? Because that's exactly what it is a hotline.
State Farm hotline,
Yeah,
and
well,
I'm not sure if we got to see many. Well, it could be. I mean, the only thing I saw with Rodgers in terms of State Farm yesterday was this new commercial with Terry Bradshaw, where they had a painting of Aaron Rodgers, a painting of Patrick Mahomes, and then Terry Bradshaw was trying to hang his own painting of himself. So, and I don't know, because Terry Bradshaw despises Aaron Rodgers, not just yesterday. I mean, it's been a long time that he's the two quarterbacks that Terry Bradshaw likes the least in the NFL happen to be the two best quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. He just always finds the need to talk poorly about them. He always says Brady's the best quarterback in the last 25 years. That's pretty much the time frame that Brady has played. He won't quite put him above Joe Montana or himself or Roger Staubach or whoever. And he despises Aaron Rodgers, because I can't think of two more different guys than Aaron Rodgers and Terry Bradshaw. But that's the only part of Rodgers I saw in the State Farm commercials. I wonder if they just pulled him this week because of what Rodgers did this week, going on Pat McAfee podcast on Friday and going all tinfoil hat himself for 45, 46 minutes. So maybe they just pulled it this week, and he'll be back next week with the State Farm ads. But let's see if State Farm can sponsor the hotline. I think that's a good idea.
That would be nice. They might be looking for something else. I mean, right now they have a quarterback who, like you said, put on the tinfoil hat, and the other one can't seem to throw past 3 yards, and Patrick Mahomes. So maybe they hitched their wagon to the wrong horse, and it should have been the horse here called FPC Radio Live. No, very interesting, very odd week, or Sunday specifically in the NFL. Real quick, we did hear last night that Deshaun Jackson is planning on signing with the Raiders, which seems like a fairly obvious solution. We obviously talked about the Raiders as potential Odell Beckham Jr. Landing spots, but Deshaun Jackson kind of flew under the radar a little bit over the course of this weekend. So he is now a Las Vegas Raider. But yeah, just overall, just a weird weekend. I think I said it to you right before we got on the air, but really the biggest winners, plural, is Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because not only did all of Tom Brady's closest competitors for the MVP crown. Now, I felt he was the front runner heading into this week, so I don't think he jumped anywhere. I just think that the players around him sort of took a huge step back. Most notably, Matt Stafford. There was poor play out of Kyler Murray didn't even play. Dak Prescott wasn't good, so it was really a really odd, surprising. Makes you wonder if Tom really did make a deal with the devil and decided that this week he was going to sit home and just laugh all his way to the head of the MVP frontrunner line.
He had voodoo dolls of all the other quarterbacks, right? And he kept sticking pins in them. I think Lamar Jackson put his name back into the MVP discussion because he was sensational again. I mean, he appears to be as close to a one-man team as we have. They can run the football, but their running backs are all geriatric ages, and he's the biggest part of the running game. And then he put up 34 points against a decent Minnesota defense. He's, I believe, this year 3-1 when trailing by 10 or more points going into the second half, and the rest of the league is like 6-93. So I would say Brady, Lamar Jackson would probably be a two leading candidates. Kyler Murray there because his team's only lost once, but he didn't play yesterday and they still won. That kind of is a knock against your MVP candidacy, I guess, when the team continues to win without you. Rodgers still has to be in there. And I know Clark Judge wrote a piece. It's kind of a double-edged sword with Rodgers. He's in there because we saw what the Packers are without him. but also an MVP can't do what he did and lie about being vaccinated
I want to push
all that rumor. I think both, you can have both arguments in there. I mean, he on the field, obviously the guy is an MVP candidate, but what he did was not MVP worthy. So it's kind of like, I know it's kind of sitting on a fence, but it's kind of two things happening at once.
I'm actually kind of glad you said that, because I almost half-hearted, like, kind of, said something yesterday, tweeted something yesterday along the lines of, who's going to be the first person to make the case that Rodgers should be the MVP based on the fact that they lost without him? I hate that argument. No offense to you, John. This isn't. I've been pretty on record. I just hate that argument in general, because I think it's such a. It's kind of weak, to be honest with you. I don't think that had anything.
Why is it weak, though? Because you keep telling us that the wins are quarterback.
No, it is. It's just
how would a Green Bay done yesterday with
because John. Let me answer. Let me answer the question. You asked me the question. Let me answer it. The reason I think it's weak is because it's been piggybacked by Packers fans for years. I mean, as soon as Aaron, remember a few years back when he broke his collarbone? Like, people were making the case when he was out for weeks that he should have been in the MVP conversation, and legitimately, based solely on the fact that the team fell out. And it's just like, it seems like constantly, oh, he's in the race. Well, you want to, okay, Aaron Rodgers, I still, again, we're not going to argue about him being the second best quarterback in the league. I still think that's the case, but he's not in the race because of last week, because I don't think he's necessarily putting up that, what MVP numbers look like. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, how people judge MVPs, there's a certain level of production that needs to be met. And he hasn't necessarily been on that pace this year. Not to mention how good their game is. Like, you can see that last week, like, as much as I was impressed by the Green Bay's performance the week before, you're telling me that last week was a Aaron Rodgers put him on in back game? No, I mean, this is a very good running team that relies heavily on Aaron Jones. So I don't think last night was any sort of proof that Aaron Rodgers should be in the MVP conversation. I think he's on maybe that outside tier right now, just based on guys like, Lamar Jackson, for one, like you said, and, my guy Tom, who I think has been kind of at the head of the race.
Well, you're on a first name basis with now.
Oh, yeah. That. Well, I mean, we call each other in the during bye weeks and off days. So, I call him.
Make sure you call him before 8 o'clock at night, because he's usually asleep by then.
Well, I call him. I just don't necessarily get a call back. So, working on that. Working on that part.
I know that. I know that feeling, Ian. I get that all the time.
But you know what that's what I mean by, like, I don't necessarily look at, like, last night. I'm not going to look at that and be like, oh man, Aaron Rodgers is definitely, big MVP can't. No, I'm like, okay, yeah, of course, obviously that, I think they would have won with him, but that doesn't all of a sudden turn the rest of his season into, relative to what other players are doing. Most definitely, obviously, you know what I'm saying. Go ahead.
We go by the records too. I mean, obviously,
of course,
we're not going to put an MVP candidate with a guy that's on a 4-4 team. So I think part of it is they won 7 in a row during that period of time, 17 touchdowns, 1 interception. I thought he played really well against Arizona. Left some points on the board. It should never come down to that crazy interception at the end of the game. It should have been wrapped up much before that, and I think that's on him as well. When they were inside the 5 twice and only got 3 points out of it. Sure. No, Brady to me is the front runner. I think Lamar Jackson's right there. I think he's probably second on MVP tracking, only because his defense is god awful. He is the running game. He's the passing game, and he's come from behind 3 times this year, down double-digit points in the second half. That's pretty impressive. So I would put him at number 2, and they're 6-2, and maybe the best team in the AFC because of him. So yeah, no, those are the 2 leading candidates, and I think there's another group of guys. I think in some of the betting parlors, somehow Josh Allen is still like first or second, which I don't understand that. His numbers aren't even good. No. And they just lost to Jacksonville. I mean, he's like middle of the pack in most numbers. Is it just people aren't watching?
I don't know. I'm starting to feel like he's regressed a little bit. I was very cautious early on. I didn't want to jump to any sort of conclusions. But we've seen 9 weeks now, or 8 weeks with the Bills, of pedestrian football. I think, and I kind of wrote this a little bit in a post-Patriots game reaction piece on Full Press, and just kind of, mentioned it that, this team, think, outside of a few lopsided victories that have really kind of skewed how we look at the Bills, like what was it, 40-0 over Houston, and there's another like
Right.
30-point win that they had early in the season.
Miami,
Yeah,
35-0
yeah,
over Miami. Yeah,
which again, those two just battled it out, in the Suck Bowl yesterday. So we can kind of see where they're at. But the reality of it is, the Bills have had a fairly soft schedule. Now, again, I'm not going to hold that against the team, but when you're trying to figure out what a team is, it makes you question how strong of a team they are. And then you watch them against Jacksonville yesterday, and you're just like, wow, this team is certainly not as good as I thought it was going to be. The offense looks like, again, it's stepped back. You know why? Because, well, Josh Allen looks like he's taken a step back. He's kind of fallen, not all the way back to what he was the first couple of years. There's definitely not that, but he's having far more moments of uncertainty, that like kind of deer in the headlights type look of what's going on, and then puzzling decisions that ultimately, more often than not, end in either turnovers or really negative plays for the Bills. So
yep.
So yesterday we saw that. We saw a lot of attention being put on the game. Obviously, the Josh Allen versus Josh Allen thing, and he just kind of just didn't show up. And guess what? All of a sudden, John, here we are. What is it? November the 8th. 9 weeks through the season, 8 weeks to go for the Patriots, 9 weeks to go for the Bills. And the Patriots and Bills both have 5 wins, and the Patriots are only a half game out of the division lead. So,
yep, no, they've made a nice return. The Patriots, without question.
Let me ask you, just kind of like along the same point that I made with Kansas City. Who do you feel more confident in right now moving forward? The Bills or the Patriots?
Still Buffalo. Still Buffalo,
but it's
not as
wavering.
Much as I was before.
It's wavering.
Well, I mean, I still think Buffalo will win the division, but it's not going to be a landslide like I thought it was going to be a few weeks ago when the Patriots were sitting at 2-4 and Buffalo had one loss, and then they lost to Tennessee, which everyone seems to lose to Tennessee in bizarre fashion. But then yesterday, I mean, how can you lose to Jacksonville? Seriously. And again, Buffalo's defense has been pretty good. I mean, they still only gave up 9 points yesterday, and the quarterback couldn't get more than that. A nice return here. The defense has stepped up. They're running the football. They're doing the little things that they have to do to win games, and that's what they're doing. They're 4-0 on the road, the Patriots, so that shows you an ability to go elsewhere and win games. Just kind of makes you think back how good this team could be with those close losses they had. The one that really stands out still is Miami.
Yeah.
Now we see what Miami is. I mean, losing to Tampa and Dallas in the fashion they lost, it's tough, but it's kind of understandable. Those teams are really good, even though Dallas didn't show up yesterday. Like you said, Ian, what a weird day. I mean, like, good quarterbacks had awful days yesterday. Like, Dak wasn't very good. He among other quarterbacks that weren't good, and Joe Burrow was not very good either. So it was just a strange day. But no, the Patriots did what they had to do yesterday, and they put themselves right back into contention. I mean, the AFC is wide open. I think that's what we're both going to end up agreeing on. Like, who the hell is the best team in the AFC? I don't know. I mean, Baltimore's flawed, right? We can. Well, the reason they're up there is because Lamar is playing at a high level, and Tennessee doesn't have their best player, and yet they were able to win against the Rams, and that was more about Matt Stafford being god awful. There's another guy who was an MVP candidate who was atrocious last night. So yeah, I mean, who's the best team in the AFC? It's wide open.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I know who the best coach team is. It's definitely the Patriots, and they still have flaws that
right
that are not necessarily normal for them, that they can correct though. It's the ball security that's probably the biggest issue for the Patriots, and they turned the ball over twice yesterday again. And going back to that Miami game, they lost that game because of a Damian Harris fumble. So that's certainly, but if you're going to have the problems and issues, those are probably the problems and issues that you want, the ones that you can correct. And the way you correct problems is with good coaching. And I'm pretty sure, outside of a small segment of Patriots fans, I'm pretty sure you got the best guy in the league to do that. So, when it comes to best position moving forward, it's hard to not look at teams like the Patriots and again, even the Ravens, because as much as I think Harbaugh's plural are dinks, he's still one of the better. I think I don't know. I just think they're just too much. I don't, you know what I mean? It's like what's the governor and CNN guy on or the former governor of New York, Cuomo or whatever. It's like him Cuomo. Like him and his brother. It's like I just don't care about your family. Yeah, I don't care about your family. I don't care about this little like inside jokes that you have and like it's Harbaugh versus Harbaugh, Cuomo versus. I just don't care. So, but anyways, aside from my personal feelings about John Harbaugh, they're still one of the better coach teams in the AFC. So if you're asking me, who do I think the best team in the AFC is? I mean, I'll give you a handful of teams, maybe Tennessee, Baltimore, but even then it's like we've seen them play some awful football as well. The only team that hasn't necessarily played awful football is the Patriots. Now, they've played a lot of mediocre football. You know what I mean? So what's more valuable, John? A lot of pretty good football or some really great football mixed with some really bad football? I don't know. Whatever you value most. I think the Patriots' efficiency and consistency has been impressive, and I think compared to some of these other teams that kind of live a little bit more bipolar, it seems like it just makes for a fascinating race for the playoffs because again, I really you asked me this question, I really just don't have an answer. Like if I'm saying the Ravens or the Titans, it's kind of by default because they just happen to have the best records and they're two recent playoff teams. Maybe New England, who knows? Yeah. Maybe Cleveland. Maybe Cleveland, turned the corner with getting rid of OBJ. Maybe that's the case. So
yeah, it could be. Yeah, I still think they have the best roster in the AFC. Save the quarterback, which is kind of a weird thing to say because we know how important the quarterback is, but Baker Mayfield is a much better quarterback without OBJ. I mean, the numbers show that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes numbers can lie, but the numbers are pretty drastically different when he doesn't have OBJ because OBJ sucks up all the life. Look, how many teams have won Super Bowls with their lead dog being a wide receiver? Like, please let me know when. Like, or especially with like a diva wide receiver. Usually, obviously, quarterback centric, but all these great talented wide receivers, they didn't win Super Bowls unless they had the great quarterbacks. Whether it was Troy Aikman with Michael Irvin, of course, Jerry Rice had Joe Montana and Steve Young, and you can go through the whole list of them and see that it's the quarterback. I mean, when you have a good, not a great quarterback with this high profile wide receiver, it doesn't necessarily always work out. Yeah, no, this thing is wide open, absolutely. And this game Sunday is huge, Ian, against Cleveland because that gets you to 6-4, and now you really start to believe you're onto something. You have a 4-game winning streak. You got a short week after that to go to Atlanta. That may not be the easiest game because you're traveling on a Thursday night. That's never the easiest thing. And Atlanta's one of those teams that they're another team that's always involved in close games somehow. But yeah, no, this one Sunday is big, and I like. What the Patriots have done has been very, very impressive. I mean, that felt like an old school Patriots win yesterday, right? You're just better than the other team. You do have some turnovers, but they have more turnovers, and you really make them pay. And you control the clock, and you run the football effectively, and you do all those things. That was a nice win yesterday against a team that's had some nice moments, Carolina, but then Sam Darnold sees the Patriots, and it's not good for him. He's got 1 touchdown in his career against them, 9 interceptions. That's not a good ratio.
It just goes to show you that sometimes I think the excuses made for players being on certain teams are a little bit overstated. For the most part, what we see on the field is who they are. Is there going to be a slight deviation one way or the other depending on the coaching staff? Maybe, but for the most part, Sam Darnold is Sam Darnold. Like I know people tried to convince themselves in the first 3 weeks of the season that he, by virtue of just moving 850 miles south, he was all of a sudden going to become a smart decision maker, able to perform in the highest and most high pressured situations. And he's not. He's just not. He wasn't with the Jets, and he's not with Carolina. And I would not be surprised if he does not see the field, or at least does not start the game next week, because Well, Matt Rule seemed like he was a little, ticked off of it, ticked off. And to that point, again, let's bring up Matt Stafford a little bit. He kind of there was a big honeymoon period here at the beginning of the season. Oh, he's finally out of Detroit. He's fine. Just wait to see. I mean, I was guilty of it a little bit too. It was like, okay, he's out of Detroit. Let's see him outside of the Lions. I'm pretty excited for that. But it's still It's Matt Stafford. He's a really
Mhm.
good quarterback. I mean, that's I don't have any footers. I don't have any headers. I don't have any sub points. It's just he's a really good quarterback who tends to make more than his fair share of boneheaded mistakes,
Mhm.
and has stretches of really poor quarterback play. Hence why he hasn't won a playoff game. Hence why he can go out and have a performance in the head of, right in the mix of the MVP race, go out and have a performance like that. Okay, that's why he hasn't got an MVP vote, and that's why he hasn't won an MVP. Like sometimes these talking points get to the point where you know people will talk like, oh, the only reason Matt Stafford doesn't have an MVP award already is because he was in Detroit. Well, no, he doesn't have an MVP because he hasn't played like an MVP. He's had good moments, but like, I mean, geez, I mean, let's not forget. I mean, he played a good chunk of his career with a guy who just got in first ballot Hall of Fame wide receiver with a
Mhm.
shortened career. Like you're going to act like Detroit. I don't care about their team success. You know, you're going to talk to me like he didn't have some nice players around him to have some success. Like, so, again, I think these like team changes are pretty overstated, and I think they make for great talking points, of course. But for the most part, I mean, these guys are going to be who they are. I mean, especially when you're talking about veteran quarterbacks. Like again, I don't know how people convince themselves that Sam Darnold, based on what we've seen his entire career plus USC, was all of a sudden going to just turn it around and not be Johnny Bravo and just all of a sudden be a really good quarterback. No, of course not. It's Sam Darnold. I don't care who's around him, what kind of coaching staff he has. So you can't teach accuracy,
I
John.
mean,
You can't teach
no,
accuracy.
no, no. I mean, Stafford uh, had, as you said, Calvin Johnson, who may be the most gifted wide receiver we've ever seen. I didn't say he's the best wide receiver we've ever seen, but 6'5", 240 pounds
Hmm.
with 4.3 speed, great hands. I mean, the whole thing. Just look at his numbers; are ridiculous. You had Marvin Jones, good wide receiver. Golden Tate, good wide receiver. Kenny Galladay got a big free agent contract with the Giants after playing in
Hmm.
Detroit. So he's had weapons throughout his entire career. And he may just be a more talented version of Kirk Cousins, who when the spotlight is really bright, he just fails.
Hmm.
Like Kirk Cousins plays really his best games at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but as we get into the prime time windows, just doesn't play well. Same thing could happen with Matt Stafford. And last night was a standalone game against a team that I think is very well coached in Tennessee. And he was just god awful. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't think Tennessee was really that great offensively last night, but he certainly gave them 14 points, a pick six, and another interception inside his own 5. I mean, it's 14 free points courtesy of Matt Stafford. So yeah, that's why how much confidence can you have in a guy like that? That if it's the NFC Championship game or even the divisional round, what exactly is he going to do?
Yeah, and it's like, look, I know, I know they beat the Buccaneers obviously earlier this season. Regardless of where it's at, I don't think that will happen again. Um, and look, I mean, when you're talking, yeah, look, the AFC is wide open. It's truly wide open. I think the NFC, this makes sense. It's not as what there's or at least I thought coming into this week, there was more good teams in the NFC, but all those good teams, short of the Buccaneers who didn't play, all lost and kind of lost in pretty puzzling ways. So, I mean, who really knows what we have in the NFC right now, except for like a logjam of teams that have 2 losses. So, um, the Rams, it's puzzling, not puzzling because again, it's Matt Stafford. You're going to get a lot of great quarterback play from him. You're going to see some athletic throws. You're going to see some great moments. Some very explosive big touchdowns. But ultimately, like I said, I would not trust him at this point. I need to see it. You know me, John. I need to see it, John. Sometimes I just need to see something before I believe it. Like the Texans. Like I told you before, I will not believe in them until they are hoisting the Lombardi. I don't care if there's 10 seconds left and they're up by 25 points. I'll never believe in the Texans until they're hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. And when it comes to
I don't think you have to worry about that for a while. The way the Texans are right now,
unless they're one of their team members are the ones that carries it to Tom Brady at the end of Super Bowl 56 this year, then maybe they will get their hands on it. But I'm talking about actually winning the Super Bowl.
They don't even have anybody that would qualify for that either.
Well, I mean, Brandon Cooks, maybe, right?
They were teammates. Cooks, right? That's right. Yeah, they were teammates.
Well,
now
actually,
we're going into the deep depth of guys.
Well, I was going to say, wait a minute. I mean, it is the Texans, so there's probably like a third of that organization. Maybe Easterby or Easterby or Easter.
Yes.
Easter breakfast or whatever.
Yep.
Easter dinner.
Yep.
I don't know. So yeah, we're getting a little off track here. I don't know. Tom Brady Super Bowl that'll recenter me. Anyway, so yeah, it's going to make for a fun last 8 weeks of the season. That's all I can really think about, because now all of a sudden, what we had coming into this week was 4 teams vying for that number 1 seed in the NFC, but with all of them losing, well, now the Bucs are right back in the mix. And if you're a Buccaneer fan, you had it was a really win-win-win situation for everyone involved with the Buccaneers. Not only, like I said, did Brady's chances improve by virtue of his contemporaries taking a huge step back, but the Buccaneers not only watched their number 1 seed competition take falls, but they saw the Saints also have a pretty devastating loss after the Falcons almost falconed once again. And I was guilty of kind of jumping the gun on that a little bit, because I tweeted Falcons going to Falcon after the Saints came back and took the lead late. And then I walked away, and then apparently Matt Ryan got them in position to win. So, so big weekend for Bucs fans, for the Bucs in general. They right now sit in sole possession of first place in the NFC South. They're right in the mix of things here in the NFC playoff race as well. And the reality of it is, they probably have the best overall unit of any team in the NFC, and I'm talking about the offense. That's better than any team's defense. Better, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense, Sean, or am I just making sense?
No. I know what you mean. I mean, you'd probably make a case it's either Tampa Bay's offense. I think Dallas's offense is really good. I mean, they had a horrible game yesterday. All you need to do when you talk about Dallas is see if Tyron Smith is playing, the left tackle. If he plays, their offense is elite. When he doesn't play, it's not good. I've never seen a left tackle have that much of an impact on a team as Tyron Smith has. No, I would say Tampa's offense is pretty much the best unit in the sport, right? I mean, it's an offensive sport anyway. So they have the best. I mean, it'd almost be like this particular team in the NBA is the best 3-point shooting team. So they're always going to be in contention because they can come back from large deficits, which Tampa can do that. So, yeah, they have the best unit. I would say in all of football, the Tampa offense right now is the best unit in football without question.
Oh, yeah. And I think that, again, just based on the way the league is such a great advantage to them. And, I would put it up against an elite defense pretty much any time. And speaking of the Cowboys, is Trayvon Diggs there? I almost feel like he's the equivalent of like a Carlos Pena in the MLB, or like Chris Davis with the Orioles.
Oh, strikeout or
home run, 45 home runs and you hit 212. You know what I mean? So like, I feel like Diggs is going to always have those big touchdowns, and then he has those like Earl Thomas boneheaded like coverage plays where it's just like, what are you doing? Like, so
he takes a lot of chances. We saw that against the Patriots, right? A pick six, and then the very next play he got burned on the out and up move, and that made the game a tie game, all within like 30 seconds. So yeah, he can be a trick or treat cornerback, which can be dangerous. And then Dallas's defense, which is played well this year. I mean, they didn't get to this record just because of their offense. The defense has been pretty good, created a lot of turnovers, but they're really built to play with the lead because they're a smallish defense, an athletic defense. I think you can run the football against them if you are ahead, like Denver was yesterday. So, again, so much of that has to do with what's going on in the game. That's why I don't know if Dallas is necessarily the best come from behind team. I mean, you come back from one score behind, not when you're down 19-0 and all of a sudden the game's gotten out of hand.
Yeah, and that's where like I ultimately have my concerns about Dallas, is because we know Tampa can win whatever they need to win. If they need to win a low-scoring game, they can win a low-scoring game. If they need to win a high-scoring game, they can win a high-scoring game. If they need to come from behind, they can do that. And that's why I think ultimately when we sit here and try to dissect all these NFC teams, we're left with, well, when all else fails, I put my money on Tom Brady. I mean, I know it's simple. It seems too easy or whatever, but the reality of it, it's true. And we've seen. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Green Bay moving forward. I don't know necessarily if Rodgers will play this week. I'm assuming there's a high likelihood that he does. But we'll just have to see how that plays out throughout the week. We do know that there are no suspensions on the table, although you and I both agreed that we certainly would not have argued against them if they were to have come down. And I still think that there's certainly warrants based on the NFL's own prior actions. I think there certainly warrants at least a 1-game suspension, but that's probably not going to happen. And you're going to have to assume that as soon as Rodgers is healthy, he's going to be back in the mix for Green Bay, certainly after what we saw from Jordan Love. Not that he was horribly bad, but I don't think he did anything to really jump out at you. And I think going up against that Kansas City defense, you would have probably liked to see a little bit more. But on the flip side, him and Patrick Mahomes had pretty much the exact same type of game. And that's what's crazy, and that's what's crazy about the media world that we live and die in, John. And that is, one guy is getting praised as being, ooh, he is not the future in Green Bay. The other guy is back, just like John Wick. If you saw, I don't know. I think Albert Breer's
heard
tweet.
that. Well, it's a straw man article, though. I mean, I think I don't. If you watched that game yesterday, which I obviously did, I think Mahomes was not very good. I think Jordan Love was a little worse. It was not exactly the game to watch elite quarterback play. So if people are saying he's back, I don't know, back from what? They scored 36 points the last 3 weeks. That's 12 points a game. They should be a better offense than that. So if someone's putting that, I mean, when they were trying to ice the game, it was 3rd and 10. He made a nice play, and that iced the game. If Green Bay makes a stop there, they get the ball back, and maybe they win the game. That was about his best play of the game.
No, it was very easily his best play of the game, and it was
maybe his only really good play of the game. So.
No, I'm with you, John. Trust me. You don't have to sell me too much on this over. I didn't say this. This was said by I think Albert Breer was the quote. I'm just mashing up words this morning. Apparently, was the tweet. Let's try that again. Was the tweet that I was quoting? There we go.
Yes, there you go.
Oh man, this is just a failure of the English language.
Tom Brady didn't play yesterday, so you're out of sorts.
Well, yeah, you know what? That's what it is. I need my recharge. I need my Tom Brady play action pass up the middle.
What are you going to do when he retires? Which may not be for another 17 years.
I don't know. We're concerned about it. Yeah, I was going to say we're concerned about what he's going to do when he retires. What am I going to do when he retires?
I know exactly, because you're not going to pick up another quarterback. That's just not.
No. Look,
you've got love for only one man.
Yeah, exactly, and one team, and that is the Patriots.
I at least have broached, potential replacements for Aaron Rodgers by, my man Justin Herbert played much better yesterday. They won 27-24. He may have been the best quarterback yesterday. He was 32 for 38 for 356 with 3 touchdowns and no interceptions.
Yeah,
he played really well.
I have to actually go back and actually, watch the shortened version of that game, because that was one of the games that I just wasn't able to pay attention to as much. I was just kind of scoreboard watching that one. So
everybody was watching the Chiefs and Packers, which didn't really deliver much.
No. It was
kind of a boring game.
Well, I watch Chiefs games now just to enjoy being right. I should have sent this to you, John, and I don't know why I did, but I saw someone random fan on Twitter tweet. Even the passes Mahomes completes aren't even accurate, and I'm just laughing because where have you heard that before, John? Every day for how many months now. So no, look, I'm not taking joy or pleasure out of someone in my opinion, in my estimation, that is really not having a good time. And there were people out there that were suggesting that he was back, but at the end of the day, like like you said, he didn't have a good game. Like he made that play down the stretch, and that's fine. That's good for him. I mean, quarterbacks are supposed to make plays, but
Yep.
and I'm never one to sit here and rail on yards per attempt, but the reality of it is, and this was a comment that I brought up recently about someone who was, talking about how he's actually improved this year because of his completion percentage. Well, you know why it's so high? Because it's an extension of the running game. I said it yesterday. The Chiefs are a running team. They're not a passing team. They are a unique running team because that's their skill. You get the ball into your playmakers' hands and let them do the work. The playmakers aren't Patrick Mahomes. He's just he's the conduit line here, John.
Mhm.
He's the distributor, he's the middleman. And all this team does is run in unique ways. But that's what they do. They run. Even like think about it, John. Those little jet sweep passes, quote unquote. How important has that been to the Chiefs offense over the last
it's
couple of
huge.
years? It's huge. You know how many touchdowns?
And a lot of teams are now starting to use that.
For
but
sure.
Yeah, that little
Yeah.
touch pass. Yeah, and it's a good play because if the guy drops the ball, it's an incompleted pass.
Yeah,
The first quarterback I saw do that was actually Elway,
Yeah.
a long
Yep.
time ago. And I remember one game, I'm like, oh, fumble. And I go, wait a second, that's a forward pass. It's not a fumble.
Well,
It's actually a good move.
No,
Get
it
to
is.
your playmakers.
It's smart, but when you look at how some people lean on it quite a bit. Like I said, I always laughed at the inflated touchdown numbers because you do that and Tyreek Hill runs 55 yards down the field and you get a touchdown pass. You're scratching your head like, next thing you know on SportsCenter, it's Mahomes magic. And I'm like, wait a minute. Hold on. Back it up a little bit. Did he switch bodies with Tyreek Hill? Was he the one running that? So yeah, I don't honestly even know what the point of this whole rant was. I was getting to something, John. I really feel like I was building towards something, but like Frank Costanza, I kind of lost my train of thought here for a second. But yeah. So, anyways, he didn't have a great game yesterday.
No.
Like I said, if I'm the Chiefs, I'm honestly pretty concerned moving forward. Like, we're this isn't just a bad little stretch of play. This isn't just these are bad habits that have not gone away that through 9 weeks still exist. Like, I know he didn't throw an interception last week, but good God, did he try? I mean, Jesus, like how many times are you going to put the ball in such horrible positioning? And like, again, even those completed passes that he makes just aren't that accurate. And like I said before, the most important thing for a quarterback, the two most important things for quarterbacks is accuracy and what's inside your head. Like how good are you at reading, deciphering, and analyzing your opponent? And I don't think he's good in either of those categories. Hence why I think he's just a guy. That that's it. That's what he is right now. It's just a guy. Like, are you afraid of Patrick Mahomes if he gets the ball? No. You're afraid of Tyreek Hill. But you're not sitting there saying
Tyreek Hill is the guy that drives them.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care like if this was Peyton Manning in 2003 or 2015 when he was on his last legs. If he stepped out on that field, you were frightened because it was Peyton Manning.
Right.
You're frightened because it's Tom Brady. I mean, those guys will always have that. When I see Patrick Mahomes get the ball, I put my feet up. I'm like, get the popcorn. I can't wait for some disastrous mistake to happen so I can run to Twitter and take another victory lap. That's how I watch their games now. That's just how it is. And most weeks, most every week, I'm pretty satisfied. But I'm very.
And the problem with Kansas City is the problem with Kansas City is they're also playing in a much better division than they've ever played in. I mean, there's no layups in that division. Denver's defense, I think, is for real. The Raiders can put points on the board. They're going to be up and down because Derek Carr he jumps into the MVP conversation and then he pulls back out because he has a stinker like he had yesterday against the Giants. And we both think the Chargers, are a playoff caliber team. But Justin Herbert is outstanding. So yeah, there's no layups in that division. So I think that it makes it even that much more difficult for Kansas City. Like that division could be just a bunch of 10-7, 9-8, 8-9 teams, right? So you get to see how that shakes out. But the AFC, I have never seen it like this, where it's just literally you can make a case the Patriots are playing better than anybody in the AFC right now, and I wouldn't call you a homer. I just think that the last 3 weeks they've looked like as good as, if not better than, any team in the conference.
Well, and if you think about it, and if you, again, when we're thinking big picture, when we want to look back at kind of this little run by Kansas City, and it's hard at this point not to sit there and come to the conclusion that, well, they benefited probably mostly from the fact that the Patriots dynasty ended in that time. Like, I mean, think about it. 2018, they don't go to the Super Bowl. You know why? Tom Brady and the Patriots. 2019, the Patriots, finally run out of gas, 3 straight Super Bowls. They get knocked out. So the Chiefs don't have to go through New England or, through the Patriots, through Arrowhead. But regardless, it doesn't really matter. They didn't have to beat the Patriots. Guess what? They go on, they win the Super Bowl. They beat the Texans. Ooh, But you know what happens when someone says the Texans?
Well, I mean, okay, but I mean, here's where this is where you lose me a little bit. Is the Patriots have, throughout this incredible run they had some layups in the postseason.
Oh,
right?
no,
I mean,
yeah, no, sure.
The Jaguars.
But
the conference to me was Brady, Manning, and Pittsburgh, like for 20 years. I don't like in Baltimore sprinkled in every now and then. It's just a little bit different now.
Well, let me ask you, and we do actually, we'll have to get off here soon, but let me ask you, what's Kansas City's most impressive playoff win? Under Mahomes.
Probably the Super Bowl. I mean, I would say the Super Bowl is the most impressive.
Yeah, but
win the Super Bowl. I mean, and that was.
No, I mean, yeah, sure, and maybe more. I guess. I mean. How can I put this? Maybe more specific to, because even that game, I know he won the MVP. It wasn't really that. I mean, he played 3 quarters of poor. I mean, in 8 quarters.
I thought the running back should have been the MVP of that game.
Yeah. I agree.
Whatever.
I agree with you in that sense. But what I'm saying is, like, I think that the Chiefs took advantage of the end of the Patriots run. And what I mean is, like, obviously in 2020 they weren't, even in the picture when it comes to getting in the way of Kansas City. In 2018, they were very much in the picture and obviously prevented the Chiefs from going to the Super Bowl. They were not in the picture in 2019 because they got knocked out in the first round. And, in hindsight now going back, we realize, oh, okay, that was pretty much the end of the Patriots run as we knew it. 2021, or this past year, 2020, they get to the playoffs and they actually play a really good team in Buccaneers. Guess what happened? They get steamrolled. I mean, they fall behind big to the Texans that year by virtue of some just god-awful decision-making from the coaching staff. They get themselves back into that game. They beat a Baker Mayfield team, which, again, no one knocked Baker Mayfield. But, again, this isn't, the most difficult opponent in the world. So what I'm saying is like...
Well, I mean, but Kansas City did lose their quarterback in the second quarter.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mahomes got hurt in the second quarter.
How big of a drop off was it, though? I mean,
well, weren't they up 19-3 when he got hurt? I think Henny had like one big play in that game, but an interception, and then. But I mean, it was 19-3 when he got hurt. I know you despise Patrick Mahomes, but give the guy credit. He's better than Chad Henne.
I didn't say he wasn't, but I also don't think that there was a huge drop off based on we saw Matt Moore come in and run that offense. We've seen Chad Henne come in and do it. I'm not saying that they're better than Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying, like, this is still a team that, like, impressive victory, sure, but whenever they've been really punched in the mouth, they really just haven't responded. Like the 49ers really took it to them, but then some. I don't know what you want to call it there down the stretch, just, tripping over their own feet, just handed the game to them. Okay,
but they were down 10 going into the fourth quarter, and they came back and won. I mean, if you're never going to give them credit for anything, then what's the point of that?
I'm not taking
Patriots
credit.
Were down 10 going into the fourth quarter against Seattle, and they won. You give them credit.
I'm not taking credit. I'm not taking credit away from the Chiefs. I'm just saying that, based on playing actual really tough opponents in the playoffs. I haven't, they've been fortunate enough to avoid Tom Brady, and when they haven't avoided Tom Brady, they've lost. So, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like it's.
Well, they're not the only team that
no, of
can
course
say that.
not.
That's
Of course,
been kind of the case. Other than Peyton Manning, who is 3-1 against Brady in the AFC Championship games.
Yeah, well, and what I'm basically getting at is like the timing of their ascension couldn't have been more perfect. Do they go to 2 straight Super Bowls if the Patriots were still the Patriots? No. No, of course not. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of my point. You know what I'm saying? So
they also got fortunate that Peyton Manning retired and got washed up, so now they could control the division. I mean, and the Patriots. I mean, you want to go back through the whole history of football? I mean, this happens all the time.
No, of course,
it's not specific to them. So
no, I didn't say it was. I'm just I'm trying to highlight this. What people wanted to call a start of a dynasty into what it really was. It was a really nice run, but the reality of it is, like, if you want to sit there and try to compare them against some of the great teams in NFL history, then yes, that's when who have they played and how have they won these games. That's when it becomes a factor. So when it comes to how we're going to break it down, like, well, whose run was more impressive? Was it the Seahawks or was it the Chiefs? Well, we'll have to look into that. We'll have to see what kind of what their opponents were like, what the difficulty was like, who was their best competition. Like, I mean, when those early 2000s AFCs, I mean, when you had the Colts and the Patriots, like you said, just dominating the conference, but you also had teams like Denver, who was really good. You had the Steelers, who had a top 3 defense, both points per game and yards.
Won 2 Super Bowls.
Every
year. 2 Super Bowls.
This was in Baltimore. Throw Baltimore into the mix, and this was year after year after year in the AFC, and it's just not like that right now. Now it could get like that in a couple years, and that's certainly something that Kansas City's really been trying to take advantage of, is the kind of the soft era of the AFC. I mean, that's what it is.
Well, okay, but I'll just push back on this. Last year, I thought the AFC was better than the NFC. Now I think it's flipped. But last year there was a 10-6 team that didn't even make the playoffs in the AFC.
Oh,
right?
Sure.
I mean, and there was an 8-8 team. There was a 7-9 and an 8-8 team that made the playoffs in the NFC. So I mean, it flipped this year. I think the NFC is better. The AFC is just like this. It's like a socialist conference. Like everyone's the same. It's just waiting from week to week. Like next week we may be talking here and going, man, the Cleveland Browns look like the team to beat. I mean, they're just steamrolling over people. Or if the Patriots beat Cleveland Sunday, we might be saying, hey, the Patriots are the best team in the conference.
Well, when Odell Beckham Jr. catches the game-winning touchdown pass against the Cleveland Browns this week to give the Patriots the victory,
that's interesting.
It's going to cause quite the stir in the NFL
and then they can cut him. The Patriots can actually. This is what's going to happen. Odell's going to just keep going to every team that's facing Cleveland.
Yeah,
like he's really that's spiteful, that bitter, that he's going to just keep showing up against Cleveland every single week.
Look, I say it a little jokingly, but no, look, if Odell Beckham Jr. passes through waivers and he doesn't get claimed, I very much think the Patriots are a very legitimate option for him, just based on, again, some of the assumed relationship that he and Bill Belichick apparently have, and the fact that, well, guess what? I think the Patriots are a destination for skill players. I don't think they're questioning necessarily the quarterback. I think they look at it as a positive situation as opposed to a unknown at this point, as we were kind of looking at it heading into the season. And look, this Patriots offense could probably use a little bit of a talent influx at that position. They have some good players, but those good players can disappear for long stretches at times. Hence why Nelson Aguilar, I don't think, had a single catch last week or yesterday. So
no, that's going to happen.
So yeah,
I think he's going to end up with the Rams or the Buccaneers. He's going to go to Tampa Bay, and what the hell? Why not? They need yet another wide receiver, depending, of course, on Antonio Brown's health.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest factor when it comes to the Buccaneers. I mean, for all 3 of those teams, the Rams, Bucs, and Patriots, he's going to have to be a free agent because none of those teams can afford him at his $7 million whatever cap hit that he's going to carry for the rest of this year.
The only team I would worry about is Seattle, maybe sneaking in there because he has, from what we understand, he might want to play in Seattle,
and they have cap space to do it. And look, they've taken a run at guys like Josh Gordon before, and I'm not comparing the two exactly, but the point is they don't pass up talent or opportunities at talent if they think that it can help them. And right now they're a team that kind of on the outside looking in at the moment. So this would be a very Seattle move. So, all right, John, we're going to have to say goodbye to our loyal listeners out there and say we will be back tomorrow to maybe discuss more about OBJ. We'll talk a little bit maybe about Monday Night Football, or maybe not, who knows, and just kind of get us ready for this week coming up. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we will talk to you then.